Hi, class. I'm going to be reading the sources for the cyberbullying prompt for the argument essay. So you should have a paper that looks like this, and I'm going to scroll down to the first source. I'm also going to tell you to randomly pause the video so that you can take notes whether you believe this source has information that's against cyberbullying or against schools punishing students for cyberbullying, or if the article is supporting that students can't be punished for cyberbullying when it's off school grounds. So here we go. Source number one is called off-campus cyber, starts with off-campus cyberbullying. It's actually called that as well. Okay. It is important to note that all of the Supreme Court student speech cases have involved speech occurring on school grounds or during school-sponsored activities. As a result, there is no clear indication of whether schools can punish cyberbullying or restrict student speech occurring outside of a school context. However, language from past Supreme Court cases is helpful in predicting how such a situation might be resolved by the court. In the seminal student speech case, which means it's most important, Tinker versus Des Moines, the Supreme Court explained that it can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. When the court stated that students do not shed their First Amendment rights at the schoolhouse gate, it implied that they have full First Amendment rights outside of the schoolhouse gates. Otherwise, they would have nothing to shed. So this means that basically students' rights exist outside of the schoolhouse. So the question is, in school, do you have the same rights as outside of school? As a result, it can be argued that if cyberbullying takes place off campus and it is not during a school function and uses no school resources, a school cannot punish the student for that speech without violating his or her First Amendment rights. So you're going to want to pause the video now and decide if there's anything in that paragraph that supports your claim, whether you're deciding that cyberbullying should be punished in schools or cyberbullying should not be punished in schools. The next paragraph says, in Bethel School District, Justice Brennan concurred in the majority opinion, which upheld the school's decision to punish a student for making a speech containing sexual innuendo at a school assembly. However, Justice Brennan emphasized that if respondent had given the same speech outside of the school environment, he could not have been penalized simply because government officials considered his language inappropriate. Similarly, in the Hazelwood School District in 1988, the Supreme Court explained that schools may regulate in-school speech, quote, even though the government could not censor similar speech outside of school. These statements could have an important impact on the court's resolution of future cases involving off-campus cyberbullying, as they suggest that off-campus student speech receives full First Amendment protection. So if you believe that that supports anything you're arguing, you should pause the video now and highlight it. The next paragraph says, as a matter of policy, the Supreme Court must confront the issue of whether a school violates a student's free speech rights by punishing them for creating on their own time and using their own computers electronic material that mocks, insults, or threatens school officials or classmates. Until they do, lower courts will continue to struggle with the resolution of whether schools can punish students for engaging in off-campus cyberbullying. Notably, the trend among lower courts appears to allow schools to punish off-campus cyberbullying if such actions cause a material or substantial interference with on-campus school administration. So I would argue that these material or substantial interference means really make a dent in the school day. In other words, really affect the school day for students. One recent and notable federal court decision is worth mentioning here. In DeJoyner versus Niehoff, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals allowed a school to punish off-campus student speech posted on the internet and created a rule that would govern off-campus cyberbullying. The court held that a student, quote, may be disciplined for expressive conduct, even conduct occurring off school grounds, when this conduct would foreseeably create a risk of substantial disruption within the school environment. And it was similarly foreseeable that the off-campus expression might also reach campus. This case is particularly notable because current Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor was part of the three-judge panel presiding over the case and ruled in favor of the school's ability to punish off-campus cyberbullying. Should a similar case reach the Supreme Court, this case would be a good indication of how she would vote. So you're going to want to go back and make sure you have highlighted any sort of information that would be for your position, and also information that would be against. When you're ready, start the video again, and we'll read source number 2. Source number 2, California schools can now discipline students for cyberbullying off campus. Now, of course, this is in 2014, but we're still in that time period because these laws aren't relevant. A new law took effect Wednesday, allows school administration to punish students who engage in cyberbullying, even if it takes place off campus. In the past, schools were authorized to suspend or expel students for online bullying only if it occurred at school, at a school event, or on the way to or from school. Cyberbullying is real, said John Walker, board president of the Ventura Unified School District. Kids don't realize the power of a word. Sometimes comments really hurt once you put them on the internet. Walker said many students have been victims of cyberbullying, including his own grandchildren. Often parents are not aware that their children are cyberbullies until it becomes a major issue. Every day, children in middle school and high school are getting hurt, he said. The new legislation was authorized by Assemblywoman Krista Garcia and signed by Governor Jerry Brown in October. Many local school leaders support the legislation, which closes a loophole in anti-bullying law. California is one of the 18 states that include cyberbullying in their anti-bullying laws, and now one of 12 states that include off-campus behavior in the laws. Bullying can have such a disastrous impact on young people's lives, said the board president of the Oxnard Union High School District. Anything we can do to deter them from that route is worth exploring. But Hansen conceded that behavior taking place outside of school is typically the parents' business. So if you've heard anything that you think goes for or against your opinion, you should pause the video now and highlight it. I'm going to pick up where we left off. I think we're starting to get into a dark gray area here, Hansen said. We don't belong in the home in that sense. On the other hand, I'm not happy with the consequences of cyberbullying. Hansen said schools should try suspending or expelling cyberbullies on a trial basis to see if punishment works at curbing the behavior. Even though schools in the past didn't have the authority to punish such off-campus behavior, Superintendent Jeff Barstard of the Congo Valley School District said it didn't mean administrators didn't get involved. In this school district, regardless of where the cyberbullying behavior originates, parents of the bullies are notified. Barstard said an administrator then sits down with the student and parents to talk about the offensive or threatening post. He also said that off-campus cyberbullying is akin to students who get in trouble after a football game. If they're impacting the life of the school and the health and safety of our kids, we tend to get involved. So now go ahead and highlight for pros or cons against schools punishing students for cyberbullying, and I'm going to continue on to the next source. Online bullies pull schools into the fray. The girl's parents, wild with outrage and fear, showed the principal the text messages, a dozen shocking, sexually explicit threats sent to their daughter the previous Saturday night from the cell phone of a 12-year-old boy. Both children were 6th graders at Benjamin Franklin Middle School in New Jersey. Punish him, insisted the parents. I said, this occurred outside of school on a weekend, recalled the principal. We can't discipline him. Had they contacted the boy's family, he asked. Too awkward, they replied. The fathers coach sports together. What about the police, Mr. Orsini asked. A criminal investigation would be protracted, the parents had decided, its outcome uncertain. They wanted immediate action. They pleaded, help us. Schools these days are confronted with complex questions on whether and how to deal with cyberbullying, an imprecise label for online activities ranging from barrages of teasing texts to sexually harassing group sites. The extent of the phenomenon is hard to quantify, but one 2010 study defined bullying as willful and repeated harm inflicted through phones and computers, and said 1 in 5 middle school students had been affected. Affronted by cyberspace's escalation of adolescent viciousness, many parents are looking to schools for justice, protection, and even revenge, but many educators feel unprepared or unwilling to be prosecutors and judges. Often school districts' discipline codes say little about educators' authority over students' cell phone, home computers, and off-campus speech. Reluctant to assert an authority that they are not sure they have, educators can appear indifferent to parents frantic with worry, alarmed by recent adolescent suicides linked to bullying. Whether resolving such conflicts should be the responsibility of the family, the police, or the schools remain an open question, evolving along with definitions of cyberbullying itself. I'm going to skip ahead. I have parents who thank me for getting involved, said Mike Rafferty, the middle school principal in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, and parents who say it didn't happen on school property, stay out of my life. All right, so there's a few more paragraphs here, but the time is going to cut me off. I want you to continue reading this article. If you have questions, let me know. That's the end of the